All right, what's going on, you guys? This is the Cubone here, and I guess you could say it's my actual first video back on YouTube. We're going to be discussing the key free agent signings for the Jacksonville Jaguars. I'm going to try to make this go by real quick. I don't have a whole lot of time, so let's not waste your guys' time. So, as I quenched my thirst, let us look at what I have written down on my big board. Also, keep in mind, since this is my first video, I am trying out some lighting and I got a microphone set up on, so see how that works out. Hopefully it improves the quality of the video, if you will. So, as you can see on the board, I have the signings that I'm going to discuss today, split up on offense and defense. So, let us start off with the offense. The four signings that they made early on in free agency. Now, obviously, not all their signings. There's some I left off, like there was a kicker that they signed, another corner that they signed that's usually on special teams from Chicago, and there was also Arden Key, who is on a one-year sort of rotational depth deal for the Jaguars. And he was actually fairly recent, too, so these signings, on the other hand, happened on the Monday's tampering period, if you will, the first real day of free agency. So, outside of Darius Williams, of course, he signed on Wednesday, or agreed to terms on Wednesday. Moving on, let's start on the offense. The four signings I have on the board, we have Brand Sheriff, offensive lineman, right guard specifically, formerly of the Washington Redskins football team, Commanders, however you want to call them. Washington. We'll call him Washington, all right? Really good player. I think he is probably going to be the most impactful player on the offense that they've signed in free agency. He's a five-time Pro Bowler, one-time All-Pro selection. And he has some injury concerns, but the fact that he still has all those accolades, despite being injured a lot, really just tells you how good of a player he is. He's really good at the run game, really good in the pass game also, and I think he's going to be, just like I said earlier, an impact player on this offense. Moving on, we got, let's talk about Evan Ingram real quick first. Evan Ingram's only on a one-year deal. Maybe it's about $9 million, I think it is, and I don't have the exact amount of money that they've signed for on the board, but know that they spent a lot of money this offseason. Probably the most, I think, in in the NFL history in terms of guaranteed money. So, but Evan Ingram only signed a one-year deal, and like I said, I think it's about $9 million. In the Doug Peterson offense, usually he utilizes two tight ends in the passing game, and you know, going back to his times in Philly, he had, Brett Selleck and Zach Ertz, and then Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert. Now he has Dan Arnold and Evan Ingram, assuming they don't draft a guy in this upcoming draft, which they might. You never know. But Evan Ingram, he has some drops in New York with the Giants, and he hasn't really lived up to his rookie season. He was a former first-round pick for the Giants, and look, it's a gamble. That's all really Evan Ingram is. He's a gamble. He pans out, hey, sign him to a long-year deal. If not, you move on. It's only a one-year deal. So, hey, you know, maybe he pans out, maybe he doesn't. But I think Dan Arnold's going to be the more impactful tight end on the offense. He's going to be the tight end number one, if you will, because Evan Ingram's not as good as a run blocker as Dan Arnold. So, but I think he'll be a really good, solid tight end number two in the offense. Moving on to the wide receivers that they've signed. They signed two of them, and oh boy, you want to talk about spending a lot of money. You want to know why Devontae Adams got all that money, and why Stephon Diggs got all his money, and Tyreek Hill got all that money? You could think this guy right up here, and you could think Trent Baalke giving all that money to him. Christian Kirk, I think, signed like a 4-year, 4-year, $84 million deal through incentives, something like that. Something wide receiver number one type of money. And then they gave Zay Jones like a $10 million a year. And neither of these guys have had a 1,000-yard receiving season to their resume. And I think Zay Jones has only gotten at most not even 700 yards. But when you're a team like Jacksonville, and you've been bad for so long, and you've been drafting really badly for so long, you got to spend a lot of money in free agency to get good free agents. And, you look at the wide receiver market, Devontae Adams and Chris Godwin and Mike Gesicki, I guess you can mention at tight end. Those guys all got franchise tag. They weren't available. Michael Gallup and Mike Williams, they signed extensions before they hit the open market, so they weren't available. Amari Cooper was traded before he can hit the open market. Tyreek Hill got traded, so he couldn't hit the open market. Like all the really good wide receivers that were available weren't allowed to hit the open market. So the only two really that were available in terms of the best wide receivers were Christian Kirk and Allen Robinson. And, well, Allen Robinson probably didn't want to come back to Jacksonville. Sad but true. So I'm fine with them giving all that money to Christian Kirk as long as he lives up to the contract that they're giving him. Like, if he gets 80 catches for 1,100 yards and 7 touchdowns during his time in Jacksonville, I think, you know what? Good on them. Good for him. I think that's a great value in signing. If he underperforms, well, add that to the resume of Jaguar free agents that have underperformed. Not everyone's Calais Campbell. Sad but true. And Zay Jones, I liked him coming out of East Carolina, but he hasn't been as productive as I was hoping he was going to be, so it kind of stings a little bit there. Now, I do like what I see the positives from Christian Kirk and Zay Jones. They do nothing but rave about Zay Jones in Las Vegas. They do nothing but say great things about Zay Jones. And Christian Kirk, 77 receptions for about 982 yards in an offense where DeAndre Hopkins and AJ Green were the top receivers on the offense. I mean, that's still pretty good. And as much as, you can say, well, those aren't really good signings, I still think they're better than what the Jags already had on their roster. Outside of Marvin Jones and Jamal Agnew, man, this wide receiving core is garbage. As my friends here in my hometown like to call them, garbanzo beans. The receiving core in Jacksonville was a load of garbanzo beans, okay? So, and I still think they're going to draft a receiver in this upcoming NFL draft. We're only about 3 weeks away as I'm recording this video. So, Christian Kirk, if he's only the slot receiver, but he gets all the targets and makes all the catches, hey, fine by me. If Zay Jones ends up as a pretty good wide receiver number 2, good news. But I have somewhat lower expectations for Zay Jones. I don't know how heavily involved he's going to be in the offense. Christian Kirk, I do expect we'll see a bigger role in the offense, however. Moving on now, let's switch gears. Let's talk about these defensive signings. And our first contestant of Try to Guess the Name, we have former linebacker for the Atlanta Falcons and the league leader in tackles last year with 190, Foye Oluokun. I believe that's how you pronounce his name. Or it's probably close. So Oluokun, like I said, led the league last year in 190 tackles. The year before that, he had about 110 tackles. Over the last 2 years, he's had about 5 interceptions, 5 sacks, a handful of forced fumbles. He's been a very productive player down in Atlanta. A very quietly productive player, too. No one really talks about Oluokun. But I think that signing would have been a lot better if we kept Miles Jack. at least in my opinion, they would have been a lot better if they kept Miles Jack. But Miles Jack has been inconsistent these last couple years. Albeit he's been shifted around at the linebacker position. He's going to be the middle linebacker. No, he's the outside linebacker. And they never really found a true position for Miles Jack these last couple years. But he's now in Pittsburgh. And now Foye Oluokun now becomes the main man at the linebacker position. So I'm excited to see how he fits into this defense. Mike Caldwell's going to run like this, I don't know what you want to call it, a 3-4, 4-3 kind of hybrid that they kind of run in Tampa Bay. So we'll see how he pans out. I expect, though, him to be probably the most productive out of these defensive signings. Similar how I think Brandon Sheriff is going to be the most productive and impactful player on the offensive side. Moving on, contestant number 2 of Try to Guess Their Name, we have former New York Jets defensive tackle Fole Fatukasi. And Fatukasi, really good at stopping the run. He's more of like a nose tackle than your sort of traditional 4-3 defensive tackle. And Jacksonville's run defense last year was actually fairly decent, but in the second half of the season, it kind of just fell apart. So hopefully with the signing of Fatukasi, that sort of stabilized their run defense a lot better. And Oluokun is also really good at stopping the run too. So you got to factor that in as well. So, and Fatukasi, not the worst when it comes to trying to get to the quarterback, but he's more well known for stopping the run. And I think that's what his main role in this defense is going to be. Sort of that nose tackle, get in the middle. Hey, you don't get to run against me. You stay where you're at that line of scrimmage. So Fatukasi, I think, is a pretty good signing. Oluokun, I think, is a great signing. Darius Williams is the cherry on top. I think the reason why they got rid of Miles Jack is to get the hometown kid from Jacksonville to come back to Jacksonville, and Darius Williams. Last 2 seasons, he's been with the LA Rams. His 2020 year was a lot better than his 2021 year, but he's a Super Bowl champion. He has a nose for the football. He's really good at getting to the receivers real quick when they catch a pass on like a screen or what do you call them? A flat route. And he studies really well. I think he's going to be a great addition to the secondary. The only concern I have, who's going to play in the slot at corner? Is it going to be Shaq Griffin? Is it going to be Tyson Campbell? Will it be Darius Williams? I don't know. I probably won't know until training camp starts. But regardless, that's all for the signings that I have written on the board. Like I said, they spent a lot of money this offseason, and Trent Baalke made it a point that they hope that they won't have to spend this much money on free agents in the future and rather spend that money in-house. Keep the players that they already have. And, well, start drafting well. Maybe that'll be the case. But for now, that is the 2022 free agent signings for the Jacksonville Jaguars. I want to thank you all for reaching to the end of the video. Be sure to like the video, subscribe, leave a comment as well. I love reading comments and responding to comments. And I will see you guys in the next video. Take care.